Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week in MMA Junkie, we take you on a quick spin through the week's news. I'm Simon Head, and I'm joined by Nolan King, by Danny Segura, and by Brian Goes Garcia. And this week, we've got something a little bit different for you. We're going to call it Overreaction or On the Money. And here's how it's going to play out. I'm going to fire out some bold statements at our esteemed panel. They're going to take turns to share their quick fire takes on those statements, telling us whether the statement is an overreaction or whether it's on the money as they react to the big news of the past week in MMA. We'll put 3 minutes on the clock for each topic. And just to make it clear before we start, guys, these statements aren't necessarily my personal view. They're views that I've seen or heard on social media over the last few days as fans and media alike react to the events of Saturday night at UFC 257, a crazy night in Abu Dhabi. So without any further ado, guys, let's kick things off. And where else do we start but with Conor McGregor? It looked like everything was in place for the Notorious to go in there, pick up a big win, and potentially move on to a huge rematch against Khabib Nurmagomedov. However, those plans completely fell apart when he was finished in the second round by Dustin Poirier in Saturday night's main event. It's put a lot of question marks over what's next for McGregor, and wherever Conor goes, forthright opinion is sure to follow. So, to kick things off this week, here's our first bold statement of the week. Conor McGregor will never win another UFC title. Guys, is that an overreaction or is it on the money? 3 minutes on the clock. Goes, you can lead off.
Well, much like this bottle of proper 12 whiskey, it's on the money. Listen, we all know this guy equals big bucks, okay? The UFC wants him to be champion again. But the road back from what just happened to him, that's really tough. We know that the UFC will try and put him in matchups that will help out. But look, there's a long line. And that line has to go through Louisiana and Sao Paulo, Brazil. Because you got Dustin Poirier and you got Charles Oliveira. Two tough guys. They definitely proved the point that, Poirier proved the point this Saturday. You cannot skip those guys. Not if you want to be taken seriously. So it's going to be very hard. On top of that, Conor McGregor's a lot older. The McGregor family has gotten a lot bigger, and there's more mileage on that body. He took a TKO loss. Let's not forget, it wasn't that long ago that Floyd Mayweather kind of took it to him. You got to rest that brain. It's going to be a long road back. The only way I could see it is if they did 165. They're never going to do that. So it's on the money, guys.
Goes, you're a smart guy, but with that, I just can't agree with you, man. I think it's an overreaction. I mean, think about who we're talking about here. Conor McGregor, the guy that can be put into a fight that doesn't make any sense, and the UFC will still promote it. I mean, he went out there, he lost to Nate Diaz, he got the immediate rematch. He went out there, he lost to Khabib. He was being positioned for a rematch at all times since that fight happened. So for me, I mean, if the UFC has the opportunity to throw him into a title fight, even if it doesn't make sense, they're going to do it. And if you look at the division, sure, there are guys out there that I think would beat him. I think Poirier would beat him in a trilogy. I think Charles Oliveira is not a good matchup for him. But at the same time, can I rule him out of those fights and say, hey, he would never beat Dustin Poirier if they fought a third time? I mean, who knows? He was hitting Dustin with some good shots in that fight before Dustin flipped the tables on him. So I can't say never say never. And so I think that's a total overreaction. And we'll see what Mr. Segura has to say about this.
I have to agree with you, Nolan. I think it's an overreaction. And look, I think there are legit concerns. I don't think Ghost is crazy. He is 32 years old. He has had a long period of inactivity, and that's never good in a sport that's always evolving and changing. So there are legit concerns about if McGregor would ever get hold of gold again. But you got to keep in mind that he's still a very dangerous fighter. He's still a guy that has a lot of popularity, so that helps him get into title shots anyways. So anytime he's in the octagon, I think he'll have a shot at winning a belt. So you can't rule him out. Also, he's a man obsessed with success, and he wants to do a whole season, gain activity back, and get back to his winning ways. So never say never. I think he'll fight for a belt again, and I think he has a chance of winning the title. But I do say there are legitimate concerns about him being champion again. But I do think it's an overreaction.
It's a big question. Will we see him back? We will find out in the coming weeks and months, I'm sure. But the man of the hour on Saturday night, guys, was Dustin the Diamond Poirier, whose superb performance saw him avenge his defeat to McGregor from their first meeting as he registered one of the biggest and best wins of his career. Given his performance and considering everything that's going on with the UFC lightweight division right now, here is our next bold statement for you. After his performance at UFC 257, guys, Dustin Poirier is now the uncrowned UFC lightweight champion. Is that an overreaction or is it on the money? Nolan, you can lead us off.
You know, I got to say that that's right on the money, man. If you look at it, Khabib's out of the picture right now. Doesn't seem like he has any intentions of fighting. Dana, I think, was keeping that hope alive just because of the money that a McGregor fight could have made. I think he was trying to position himself the best he could to get Khabib back. But look at it, right? Dustin's beaten Justin Gaethje. Dustin has beaten Conor McGregor now. He's beaten the guys at the top of that division. And sure, you know, with the champion's gonna be out of the picture. So for me, you have to say that he's the uncrowned champion right now, sitting pretty at the top, having beaten those guys. I think it's Dustin Poirier's division, really. He's kind of already starting to call the shots a little bit in the post-fight press conference, saying he's not going to fight Michael Chandler. So the 155-pound division needs a king right now, and right now it's Dustin Poirier.
On the money. I mean, so I remember not so long ago, maybe a couple of days ago or a day ago after we saw that performance against McGregor, somebody asked me, what does Dustin Poirier need in order to become champion at 155 pounds? And what I said was he needed Khabib to retire because the man is that good. It just happens to be that one of the greatest of all times happens to be in his prime and in his division. But right now, with Khabib out of the picture, because a return doesn't seem likely at all, even though Dana White might think otherwise, it does seem like Dustin Poirier is the best fighter right now at 155 pounds. I mean, he's certainly the most well-rounded. He can strike with the best. He showed he can wrestle against McGregor. He's got a very, very good ground game, even though maybe his guillotines might not work all the time, but he's still a black belt, very legitimate on the ground. And he's got a ton of experience right now. He's in his prime. Everything is working for him. His team is very good. It just seems that Dustin Poirier right now is at a great moment in his career, as well as star power. So he is the uncrowned champion at 155 pounds, and I would dare to say the best fighter right now at lightweight. So in my opinion, Dustin Poirier, the uncrowned champion, that was on the money.
On the money. Dustin better get well acquainted with Walmart, guys, because if he's walking into a Target, they're going to ask him to stock the shelves because he's going to have the biggest target of them all on his back in that superstore. Listen, he's got wins over Justin Gaethje, who's a former interim champion, and 3 UFC champions, okay? How do you put that aside? You have to figure these things out that way. You really have to break it down when you talk about 155. And that kid has accomplished a lot. Let's not forget, how tough is it in the COVID-19 era just to put together a camp, fight with a family and all that? He put all that aside. The fact that Conor McGregor slept him in the first fight, he got through that. Right now, if you don't have an opponent, you need to be training for the champ. And if Khabib's not there, you're training for Dustin Poirier's skill set because that's the man. He's the uncrowned king. He is the guy.
Yeah, I think he should be walking around with a belt over his shoulder right now, to be honest with you. I think that fight on Saturday should have been a fight for the UFC lightweight title. But it wasn't just about the main event on Saturday night, guys. Of course, the co-main event saw the long-awaited UFC debut of 3-time former Bellator lightweight champion Michael Chandler, who needed just half a round to put away Dan Hooker before issuing a huge call-out to Khabib at the end of his fight. So, guys, that was a bold statement from Michael Chandler, and here's a bold statement about Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler deserves an immediate title shot after that debut performance. Overreaction or on the money? Danny, you get the first go at this one.
I'm going to go with overreaction, and it hurts to say because I've been following Michael Chandler for some time now, and I'm very happy to see him in the UFC. And not only that, but he killed it. I mean, that was a perfect debut. Stopped Dan Hooker, one of the most durable fighters at 155 pounds in the first round. On top of that, has an amazing post-fight call-out, and the guy is just, 10 out of 10 in that UFC debut. So it all points out that he does deserve to fight for the title, but let's not forget about the one and only Mr. Charles Oliveira, who's in a 7-fight winning streak, and in his last bout defeated the boogeyman, Tony Ferguson. I think that's the fight to make, Charles Oliveira versus Dustin Poirier. Now, if Michael Chandler didn't have sort of all these other players in the division, I think he probably would deserve a title fight. But at this point, keeping in mind what Charles Oliveira has done in that division, it's got to be Charles Oliveira next, right? I mean, he just defeated Tony Ferguson. So I would say overreaction. Michael Chandler needs one more fight.
Guys, I'm going to say it's on the money. I know you guys are hating me because of some of the things I've said in the past. You're right. There are guys that deserve this ahead of Michael Chandler, but that's not the way the UFC thinks. Do you guys really think, okay, with a hot commodity like Michael Chandler, after what he just did over a tough guy like Dan Hooker, how do you deny him this shot? That's the way the UFC is going to spin this for you guys. They're going to say, we can't possibly risk putting Michael Chandler against somebody else and risking losing out on this big fight that you could put together. If Khabib steps away, then yeah, maybe I guess you can go with the next two guys. But if Khabib sticks around, for sure, USA versus Russia, Bellator versus the UFC, they would give him that shot. And you know what? I wouldn't be shocked if they did it anyways, because they love Michael Chandler. And I'm not just saying that because I'm living in the house he used to own. What do you think, Nolan?
Well, goes, you got to go back and read that question because it says, does he deserve it? And so for that, I think this is an overreaction. I don't think Michael Chandler deserves it based on one win against Dan Hooker. Sure, if he came in and did that to Dustin Poirier or something, you could have that debate. But Charles Oliveira is there. There's no short of contenders. He's won 8 fights in a row. He's beaten Kevin Lee, who's competed for an interim title before. He's beaten Tony Ferguson, who was the interim champion at one point. So for me, I think you need to make Dustin versus Charles Oliveira next. Now, will they? Who knows? Dana White seems set on Poirier versus Chandler. But in terms of deserving things, I think a lot of these opportunities have to be earned. And I think Charles Oliveira has more than earned his shot to be the next guy in line. And so has Dustin Poirier. So that's the fight to make. I'm going to have to side with Danny in this tiebreaker.
Well, here's the thing, guys. Charlie Olives was supposed to be fighting Michael Chandler, wasn't he? That's what I heard. I thought he was supposed to be taking that fight on Saturday night. He didn't take the fight. Dan Hooker took the fight. So has Charles Oliveira ruled himself out? That's what I want to know. Michael Chandler, I suspect we will see at the top at some point in 2021. Now, guys, our final bold statement of the week concerns the supposed lightweight sweepstakes that we saw set up ahead of Fight Night in Abu Dhabi, with Dana White saying that Khabib had told him that he was looking to be impressed by one of the 4 lightweights in action at the top of the card at UFC 257. Dustin Poirier delivered. Michael Chandler delivered. 2 huge performances. But at the post-fight press conference, Dana told the media that Khabib didn't seem that impressed and said that prospects for a return aren't looking too good. So, with all of that in mind, here's the final statement, and it's a bit of a sweeping one. The Khabib sweepstakes were a hoax. It was all about setting up Khabib versus McGregor 2 and nothing else. Final 3 minutes. Overreaction or on the money? Goes, take it away.
I'm going to go on the money, guys. Come on. Dustin Poirier finished Conor McGregor with strikes. Michael Chandler had the perfect performance in a debut on the biggest stage over Dan Hooker, and he nailed it not just in the fight, but with the post-fight. So, how does that not impress Khabib? I don't think we're being told the truth here, guys. Khabib not being impressed by something like that, aside from punting guys out of the cage, what more could you possibly do? What more could you ask out of those 2 individuals? So now it's on you, Dana White. You got to learn to swipe left on Khabib. Let him do his thing. He says he's retired. How many times have we heard you say when a fighter even utters the R word, that's it. It's time to let them go. I think enough is enough. At this point, we're getting close to really leaving things where it could be insulting to all those other guys that are working their way up to a title shot. What do you think, Nolan?
Goes, I think you are on the money. I think this is an overreaction to me. Like you said, there was plenty of opportunities here for Khabib to say, man, that Michael Chandler guy, he's in the division now. He used to be the best in another promotion that claims they have the best fighters in the world. That seems like a good challenge. Or, man, Dustin Poirier just impressed me too. Or Charles Oliveira, 8-fight win streak. The opportunities are there. And I think that the way it was portrayed to the public by Dana White, I don't think necessarily he's outright lying. I don't want to call him a liar, but at the same time, I think he was holding on to a 1% chance and saying, hey, but there's still a chance. And listening to Khabib's interview that he did with a Russian outlet, which is slipping my name this past week, I mean, it was the same stuff we had heard before. There was nothing different. So I think Dana wanted that McGregor rematch for the dollars and cents that comes with it, and just kind of portrayed it that way. So, yes, this is an overreaction. Danny, what do you think, man?
On the money. It was a host. Let's call it how it is. I think the person who had it best was Brian Keller, who tweeted right after the announcement, remember a week ago, that they were going to have about the future of Khabib, right? It was a yes or a no. It was going to be definitive. And what comes up is, you know, something in the middle and a maybe. And what Brian Keller had said was the announcement was go buy the pay-per-view of UFC 257. That's what it was. Khabib has said for a while that he does not want to come back. He has no interest in fighting. And then Dana White comes out saying like, oh, well, if anybody at UFC 257, any of the lightweights, do anything exciting, anything spectacular, maybe that'll change his mind and he'll return. But we're not talking about some kids here. We're not talking about a bunch of 25-year-olds that are unproven commodities. And maybe if they turn the corner at UFC 257, maybe that'll change the mind of Khabib. We know what Dustin Poirier brings to this point. We know what Chandler brings. We know what Dan Hooker brings. We know what Conor brings. So there was nothing else to prove. It was all a hoax and just, again, hanging on to a small thread that maybe, just maybe, Khabib would come back. But he's retired, and he's been saying he's retired for a while.
Yeah, and thank you very much, guys. That was completely on the money from the three of you. I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. And now we just need to see a title fight. We need a title fight at 155 pounds, and the division can move on in the post-Khabib era. Right, that's all we've got time for on this week's edition of the show. A huge thank you to Nolan King, to Danny Segura, to Goz Garcia, and to Cole Coffey behind the scenes, pushing all the right buttons for us. No UFC or Bellator action on the slate this weekend, but that doesn't mean we get a week off. We've got One Championship 127 from Singapore. We've got LFA 98 from Park City, Kansas, and KSW 58 from Łódź, Poland. And of course, we've got all the fallout from UFC 257, which is sure to carry on through the week. So keep it locked to MMA Junkie all week, and we'll be back with another edition of Spinning Back Click next week.